with the tools at your fingertips. CMI creates workplaces full of inspiring leaders with its on-demand resources, network of mentors and industry-leading accreditations. Search CMI Confidence today.
This session is recorded and will be available on the CMI website and YouTube channel. Join the conversation by using the live chat box for your questions and comments. We'll answer as many as we can during the Q&A.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Leading with Purpose, a wellbeing-centric approach to ethical leadership digital event. My name is Natasha and I'm an events delivery coordinator at the CMI. Don't forget to join the conversation by using the live chat box and we'll answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A. I will now hand over to Stephen, the Communications and Social Media Joint Lead from the CMI Northern Ireland Board, to begin today's event.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Natasha, and good afternoon, everyone. You are very, very welcome to this CMI Northern Ireland webinar, Leading with Purpose, a wellbeing-centric approach to ethical leadership. We're absolutely delighted to have you joining us this afternoon, and I'm coming live to you from the picturesque little seaside town of Carrickfergus. Thank you so much for investing your lunch hour with us. I can promise you now that this is going to be one of the most insightful hours that you spend this week. If it's not, please do come and message me on LinkedIn. I really will want to hear from you and I want to find out how we can make the next event even better. Well, who am I? My name is Stephen Egan. I'm the Communications and Social Lead for CMI Northern Ireland's Regional Board, and I am your host for this afternoon session. In the next hour, we're going to be talking about all things to do with well-being, with ethics, and with inclusive leadership, aiming to foster a more sustainable work environment for you and your team. Nobody wants to work in a toxic workplace, and neither does your team, quite frankly. So this discussion is going to help equip you with the best strategies, the best mindset, and all of the tools to bring about the change that you want to see in your workplace. We're going to be having a look at the impact of well-being-centric leadership on employee engagement and productivity. We're going to be talking about some real-world case studies highlighting ethical leadership in action, and as well as that, giving you practical guidance on creating a meaningful and inclusive environment that celebrates members of your team. Now, if that sounds like the kind of thing you're going to be interested in, you're in the right place, and we look forward to having you join us in the chat to the side here. If you have any questions or comments, remember, this is a dialogue, it's not a monologue. We would like to see and hear from you, so do share your thoughts and comments as we go along, and of course, we'll be having a Q&A later on as well. But for now, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce our two speakers who will be presenting to you this afternoon. Belinda O'Neill is the founder of Be Inspired to Be, who brings a wealth of experience in inspiring individuals and organizations to embrace positive change. Belinda also runs the Be Inspired to Be podcast, available right now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, where she dives into all things to do with well-being and showcases a wide variety of inspirational stories from across Northern Ireland. Belinda, thank you so much for joining us.
Delighted to be here, Steve.
We're also delighted to be joined by Judith Chilvers, one of my colleagues on the CMI Northern Ireland Regional Board, who is our Diversity and Inclusion Lead, and is also a Senior Risk Manager for Distributed Ledger Technology and Digital Assets at Lloyds Banking Group. Judith will be offering some deep insights into ethical leadership in her experiences, and also giving us insights on well-being from a psychological background as well. So before then, I want to give you a very quick run through of how the next hour is going to work, folks. Our session will begin with back-to-back presentations, first from Belinda and then from Judith, followed by a discussion where we'll be diving into their insights a wee bit more. Remember, want to hear all of your questions and comments in the chat as we go through, and I'll be calling those out as well, so please do remember to get involved. Don't forget, while we're here as well, you can follow CMI Northern Ireland on LinkedIn and Twitter/X. So do make sure to give us a follow over there, where after this, the conversation will keep going. We've got some brilliant free resources for you over there. So make sure to check that out before you head off. But first, thank you for being here. Let's embark on this journey together. Our first speaker is Belinda O'Neill. Belinda.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. It was actually your Deputy Chair here in Northern Ireland, Emma Finney, who invited me to join you for this session this afternoon, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here. So I suppose the session that I'm going to cover for the next few minutes is in relation to well-being-centric leadership. So Natasha, if you could maybe just add my slides to the screen, that's absolutely brilliant. So we're really going to take a bit of a deep dive for the next few minutes into this area of well-being-centric leadership, and it's certainly a hot topic of conversation in most organisations. And I suppose today is really just maybe to have a bit of a deeper understanding of what it actually means, and how it can be potentially implemented into your organisation. But hopefully, it is in some way. And I really love this quote from Judd Allen, who's the president of Healthy Culture now at LSE, and they say, "A well workplace positively influences employee wellness by adjusting business practices in such a way that employee health and well-being are integral to how work gets done." And ultimately, that's what we all want. We want to be in a healthy work environment, whether that's through a hybrid working model, in the office model, or indeed totally remote. But we want to be part of a team where well-being and our health and our whole selves feel valued and important. So I suppose in terms of the agenda for this brief session of what I'm going to talk about, so we're going to look at, how is well-being-centric leadership defined? Why is it important for leaders and teams? What does it look like in practice? We're going to just talk briefly around self-leadership, because for me, that's where this all begins. Some implementation strategies, points to consider, and then my conclusion. And there are a list of references at the end of my presentation as well that has helped me to build this for you today. Okay, so I love this model, the Wellbeing-Centric Leadership Model, which was devised by Tate Shanafelt, who is a medical doctor, and many of his colleagues. And this really was derived post the COVID-19 pandemic. And this was actually implemented in the healthcare sector. So basically, I suppose the optimum word here from this model that we see here on the right is care. So what does he say? He says, well, caring leaders demonstrate respect, empathy, curiosity. They continually seek to understand and validate the complex needs and contributions of individuals and teams. And an educator and philosopher, Noddings, also has defined that term care as a set of relational practices that foster mutual recognition and realization, growth, development, protection, empowerment, human community, culture, and possibility. Magnificent words there, and we all crave those and want those from every organisation that we become party to. And I suppose in terms of the infographic there, so care about people always, and basically that's the foundation of the wellness-centred leadership model. The second piece then is to cultivate those relationships with individuals and teams, and then inspire that change. So I suppose taking a deeper dive into what they actually mean in a wee bit more detail. And I love this infographic from Nottingham-Trent University in terms of how we as leaders can foster a well-being-centric culture. But there's three core elements, as we showed in the last infographic, in terms of the model, and that is care about people always. And I suppose in terms of us as managers and leaders, what does that sort of look like in terms of our own mindset? How can we potentially care about people always? So leaders need to be aware of the role that they play in well-being and the vitality of the team. Leaders should be curious, respectful, empathetic, and understanding. And in terms of behaviours that we as leaders need to show up with, it's really looking after our team, recognising our team, giving credit where it's due, demonstrating gratitude for jobs and work well done. Discuss and model self-care. Really, really important. And we need to talk the talk, we need to walk the walk. So discuss and model self-care. Lead the conversation on work-life integration. Be aware of any signs of distress. So if you're starting to see somebody in your team maybe just not showing up as their usual selves, we need to be aware of that and get involved and ask how they're doing. Be aware of any signs of distress. So if you're in a team environment, maybe some of the team have become a little bit quiet. It's being aware of that and addressing that in a timely manner. Being authentic in every interaction, really, really important. Authentic leadership is so vital. Be transparent, be honest, be your authentic self, and be vulnerable. It's okay to be vulnerable as well. Intently listen. We so often listen to respond as opposed to actually holistically listening to what our team members are saying. So be in that environment where you are really intently listening, and be curious, ask questions. So that's probably sort of a wee bit of a deeper insight into what that caring about people always potentially looks like in terms of being a leader. The second piece then is cultivating relationships with individuals and teams. So again, in terms of mindset, well, leaders should respect that the team are all unique and they have their own personal and professional goals. And that, from my perspective, was a big thing whenever I took on a leadership role many, many years ago, that I had to remember that, you know, the team members aren't me. They don't think like me. They don't act like me. They're individual and they're unique. And it's respecting that. Creating an environment that supports the development of those team members, regardless of what sort of path they want to take. Not everybody wants to pursue a managerial or a leadership role, but it's making sure that there's adequate supports and adequate developmental opportunities across multiple areas within the organisation. We as leaders, we set the tone, we set the agenda, we bring people together. So asking for input from the team and shaping those agendas is really, really important. And that helps to cultivate those relationships. In terms of behaviours, focus colleagues on their passion. Big believer in terms of following your passion. Big believer that when you do, you fulfill your purpose. Respectfully give feedback. Okay, so we can be constructive around feedback, but respectfully give it. It's all in our tone. And offer support and guidance. Help the team to derive purpose from their role and their work. We spend so many hours in a work environment. We all need to find that purpose in the role that we're fulfilling. Present options as opposed to solutions. So try and empower the individual to come up with those solutions themselves. So potentially give them a range of options and let them self-solve. Empower and act as a coach. Really important in terms of our work environments to have that mentor-coach approach. Share stories. The power of storytelling is fantastic in the workplace. So be open, share stories, and enable others to share their story too. And ensure everyone has a voice at the table. Promote formal and informal events to help build more meaningful relationships. And I suppose that social aspect is really, really important, and that fun aspect is really important too. And then in the third sort of piece of that model, inspire change. Again, as leaders, in terms of our mindset, so aim to be motivational and inspiring. Your energy really matters. How are you showing up? Build consensus regarding improvements. Be open, authentic, transparent, and remember, communication really is key. And in terms of the behaviours, model the desired change, especially when there's transformational change happening within the organisation. Model that desired change. Establish mutual respect. Influence, empower, and follow up. Big word or term there, follow up. You say you're going to do something, you say you're going to meet with a team member, make sure that you do follow up. Reaffirm values and purpose, and seek feedback. Openly ask for thoughts, feedback, and respond to it in an appropriate manner. So lots to think about there. So why is wellbeing leadership, wellbeing-centric leadership important? Why is it important? Well, ultimately, it has been proven that if we are happy at our work, we tend to be more productive. So according to Humanicity, promoting wellbeing is essential for today's organisations to thrive. And we don't want to survive. We want to thrive. We want to blossom and bloom and develop and evolve. And research from Oxford University actually states that happy and engaged employees are 13% more productive in work. And I suppose in terms of other outcomes, team members will feel more valued, appreciated. People will proactively discuss their well-being needs, better employee engagement, better culture, and team role modelling, and more caring mindset among their peers. It just makes for a better working environment for you as the leader, and for all of your team members as well. So in practice, what does it actually look like? And I suppose I said at the very beginning of this, self-leadership is hugely important. And for me, it all begins, well-being centricity begins with self-leadership. So what is that? Here's a couple of definitions that I particularly like. So self-leadership is a prerequisite for effective and authentic team leadership. And then in fact, more autonomous self-leading workers are more productive, irrespective of their work role. So I suppose if we go back to that triangular model that we talked about at the beginning, for me, the bottom layer of that is care for self. So care for self, leading up into care for others, leading up to cultivating those relationships, and then progressing to inspiring change. So well-being centricity begins with self. With that in mind, then, I suppose here are 3 questions. And if you have a pen and a piece of paper, jot them down. If you have a camera, feel free to take a screenshot. But these are 3 questions I'd really love for you to think about. What is your well-being status currently? How does this support you to inspire that change among your colleagues and your team in terms of well-being? And how does this impact on your ability to lead? So where are you in terms of your own well-being right here, right now? And according to the International Institute of Management Development, self-leadership is about leading ourselves before we can lead others. So it's really important to look after ourselves. Self-care, self-empathy, self-kindness, hugely important in terms of leadership. So there's 3 questions for you to mull over for a moment or two. In terms of implementation strategies, and I love this infographic from togetherplatform.com, and they're highlighting 10 sort of very straightforward ways to enhance that well-being centricity within your organization. So firstly, get leadership on board with well-being. So it's back to us as managers and leaders. We need to set the agenda. We need to walk the walk as well as talking the talk. And also, if you have an executive leadership within your organization, make sure that you have a champion within that to support you in terms of making well-being at the center and integral part of everything that's going on. Raise awareness around the importance of mental health. Make it okay to talk about it. Encourage mental health champions, perhaps to begin with, within your team. Promote dialogue around the challenges of workplace well-being. Organise mentoring opportunities, back to that mentor-coach mentality. Encourage employee recognition. Is there a strategy in place for that? Train new managers to support workplace wellness. Survey your employees with pulse checks to see how the teams are doing. Take stock of your workplace environment. Is it conducive to a healthy workplace? And connect employees with any external supports as they need it. So it's making sure that you do have that adequate framework in place. So points to consider. Create a well-being centric culture. Begins with you, the leader. Suppose a question again, have you ever scheduled a meeting with yourself to self-evaluate? We tend to put others way ahead of ourselves. We put meetings in the diary for everyone else. Have you actually ever scheduled a meeting with yourself? Really important. Review your organization's framework. Is it well-being centric right here, right now? Is there a few gaps that are identified that maybe you need to work on? Are the executive and the leadership team on board? Is employee engagement effective? Is there a recognition strategy? Are there adequate employee supports in place? And does well-being feature in every setting? Is it mentioned in every room? Is it mentioned in every meeting? Okay, next slide. So in conclusion, our well-being and that of our employees is intrinsically linked to performance. There's a huge amount of evidence to support that. Taking a more well-being centric leadership view will support you as the leader. It will support the organisation and indeed the employees. And here's a piece I wrote and I shared it on LinkedIn a good while ago at this stage, and a lot of people seem to resonate with it. And it's leadership isn't loud, it doesn't scream, it doesn't roar. And in contrast, it has kindness and empathy at its core. And that's how I define leadership. So here are the list of references, and there's some further reading, some great reading in some of these articles for you to enhance your own learning around wellbeing-centric leadership. And in terms of me, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Belinda O'Neill. I have a company page there as well, Be Inspired to Be, and I operate across all of the usual social media platforms, but LinkedIn would be the main one that I use. As Stephen referred to my podcast, if you visit my website, there are direct links there to that. I am a published author, and I don't know if you can see this, but this is my book, Be Inspired to Be, and it's a piece of inspiration that I have written for every day of the year, all original work. And I'm delighted to offer you all a 20% discount off my book at the moment, and that's the code and the links in relation to that. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to the Q&A shortly. I am now going to hand you over to Judith for her presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Belinda. That was a really insightful presentation, and certainly got me thinking about where well-being is placed in my day-to-day work. I really liked particularly the leader's role in well-being behaviours that you mentioned, and modelling self-care. And following on from that, I'd like to focus now on well-being for leaders and managers themselves. As leaders who prioritise their own well-being can be better equipped to handle stress, make good decisions, and consciously looking after our well-being can prevent burnout and help sustain energy and focus. So thinking about some of the topics just on the slide, I'd like to spend the next 10 minutes or so with a guided meditation, which amongst many other benefits can increase self-awareness and reduce stress. So in the spirit of modelling this self-care, make sure you aren't driving and it's safe to listen. Try to get somewhere comfortable and quiet. And when you're ready, I'll invite you to close your eyes, please. Try not to focus on any of the noises you may hear around you. Just acknowledge them and move on. And start by concentrating on your breathing. Breathe in and out. Deeply in and slowly out. In, out. And let's continue with this deep, slow breathing. We're going to breathe in to the count of 4, hold for 4, and breathe out for 6. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Feel yourself calming down as you breathe deeply. Breathing helps you focus and be alert, but also to be relaxed. Continue to breathe slowly, and every so often just turn your attention to your breath. If you notice that you are breathing more quickly again, you can slow it down again through counting. Now concentrate on your body. You may find that you are holding tension in your jaw or your arms, your shoulders or your hands. Relax your face and jaw. Feel all the little worry lines around your eyes smooth out. Allow your lower jaw to relax and your tongue to rest back behind your top front teeth. Moving down to your shoulders now. Notice if you are holding any tension in your shoulders or your neck. Allow your muscles to relax into an easy position. Enjoy the feeling of relaxation spreading down into your hands. Relax your hands and your fingers. Let all the tension disappear from your shoulders and your hands. Now focus your attention on scanning the rest of your body. If you identify any other areas of tension, concentrate on relaxing those muscles and bringing that same quality of calm and relaxation. Keep your breath calm and relaxed. Notice if your breathing is faster, and remind yourself to breathe slowly and calmly. Count in for 4, hold for 4, and breathe out for 6 if you need and want to. Now concentrate on your thoughts. Imagine each statement that follows and believe each one to be true if you would like it to be. Many people repeat each one in their thoughts as they hear them. I grow stronger and wiser every day. I remain steadfast and resilient in the face of any adversity. I adapt with agility and turn obstacles into opportunities. I have the inner strength to lead with courage and compassion. I face uncertainty with confidence and determination. I'm fully present and attentive in every moment. My mind is clear, and I approach challenges with calm and purpose. I prioritize with ease, and I remain focused on what truly matters. I create space for creativity and innovation in my leadership. I build trust and foster meaningful connections. My words and actions inspire others to reach their full potential. I lead with intention, courage, and integrity. I guide others with clarity and inspire them to follow a shared vision. My actions today lay the foundation for lasting success. I'm aligned with my purpose and committed to achieving it. I lead with empathy, understanding, and authenticity. I value the contributions of others and encourage their growth. I am a source of positivity, motivation, and support. I lead with empathy, understanding, and authenticity. I lead with empathy, understanding, and authenticity. Every time you are faced with doubts or setbacks, remember to do the 3 elements that you have practiced here today. Calm your breathing, relax your body, connect your thoughts to your vision and purpose. You can use these elements every day and anywhere as long as you are in safe surroundings. The more you practice, the easier it will become to be calm. The more you practice, the easier it will be to become relaxed and connected to your purpose. It's something you can practice every day. For now, it's time to return your mind and body to the day's activities. Slowly feel yourself becoming more alert and energized. Feel your awareness growing and feel yourself bringing all parts of you back to the here and now, with the calm, relaxed feelings that you have just experienced. When you are ready, you can slowly open your eyes, move your body gently in your seat and stretch your muscles if you need and want to. Sit quietly for a few moments as you wake up completely, and when you're fully alert, you can resume your usual activities, feeling refreshed and energized for your day. So thank you, everyone. So now that we're all hopefully relaxed but refreshed, I'd like to invite Stephen and Belinda back for the discussion.
Judith, Belinda, thank you so much for those insights. I don't know about all of you, but I'm definitely feeling a lot more relaxed than I was when we were kicking off. So Judith, thank you so much. And certainly much more informed, thanks to Belinda as well. So some really, really good insights there. I mean, leaders can foster ethical and inclusive places. You know, sometimes it's going back to the basics. It's about practicing and prioritizing, you know, communicating openly. You know, it's very much a people-centric process. And I think some of the practical strategies that we've, you know, heard from Belinda, but also just practice with Judith as well, is looking at the way that we ourselves practice, the way that we engage with others, but also engage with ourselves. And I think that idea of taking the time to make an appointment with yourself, to check in, keep yourself grounded and aware of how you are acting in the workplace is such a simple technique, but one that can pay absolutely huge dividends. I'm conscious of time. We're about halfway through, and I'm absolutely blown away with the number of questions that are in the chat, but also have been submitted in advance as well. And also, before we get into the questions, I just want to give a special shout out to Fariza Miz from tuning in from Malaysia, and Rosie Catherine joining us from the Philippines. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's fantastic to have a truly global audience for this CMI Northern Ireland session. But without any further ado, Belinda, Judith, are you ready for some questions? We can jump straight on in. And if I can kick us off and get the ball rolling, I mean, what are the practical strategies that leaders can use to really engage team members of their team or other colleagues with differing levels of understanding around ethics and inclusion? In the chat there, TEJ shared their example that, you know, they've worked with many managers, but many of them are completely unaware of the kind of growth or adaptive mindset with this regard. So without this kind of acceptance, how can you really build a successful team to promote well-being in the workplace? Any thoughts on that?
Judith, do you want to begin or?
Sure, yes. I think that's a really good question. And I think that really it starts with some of the things that Belinda was talking about at the outset, whereby well-being and the mindset needs to be embedded within your business strategy. It is part of your business. And therefore, how has the organization that you're in sort of articulated that to the managers? And it doesn't have to be, you know, well, we have never done it before, so we can't do it now. Everything is evolving and adapting all the time. And I think that at any point you can introduce this as part of the strategy and to become something that is measurable and accountable, and you can start getting feedback from your colleagues. What are your thoughts on that, Belinda?
No, absolutely. And I think it's starting the conversation. I suppose it's back to that question that was asked there, you know, that many managers are unaware of a growth and adaptive mindset. So I suppose the piece is, are those conversations even happening? If they're not, well, then they need to begin to happen, because I suppose it's the link between, you know, all organizations want to perform well. They want to be sustainable. They want to continue to offer employment for their staff. So they have to be thinking of new and innovative ways to grow and develop. And so productivity is really, really important. So sometimes when you have potentially some leaders at an executive level who maybe aren't sort of on this page, I think when you start to bring the facts and figures in terms of the case studies around, well, actually, if we can create a better culture, we're going to retain our staff, we're going to have more productivity, which ultimately is going to mean hopefully more profitability down the line as well. Well, I think maybe sometimes that might help to change the mindset and to hopefully help them get on board. Now, we shouldn't have to do that But the reality is, I get it. Sometimes it's hard to have these discussions. So it's bringing some facts and figures to the table, and it's having the courage to start the conversation.
Absolutely, and sometimes plucking up that courage can be the most difficult thing of all, especially when it's not the easiest conversation to have. I think sometimes when you're bringing challenges like this upwards, it feels very personal very quickly, when of course it's not. It's about trying to kind of build that kind of culture, and I think arming yourself with the statistics, the research. CMI has done some fantastic research on this question specifically, where you can see the tangible impacts of actually embedding well-being as part of the strategy, and also not feeling guilty. Sometimes I think you can feel guilty if you make that appointment for yourself. You can feel guilty that, well, I should be doing something else. Is this getting me towards the goal where I'm going to? Actually, it is. It's taking that moment to calibrate yourself and keep moving forwards, and move forward productively rather than aimlessly. It's very hard to steer a ship with no rudder. I suppose building on that as well, I mean, like, it's just talking about trying to inspire it in a culture, and I suppose taking the conversation a slightly different way. How can leaders inspire personal accountability in fostering well-being and ethical behavior, especially with team members who might not see it as their role? So this is perhaps looking in a more manager to employee level, where other colleagues, especially those who are more junior, might not see this as their responsibility. How can we inspire that as leaders and managers?
So I think that's another great question, and I think for me it starts again with sort of setting those expectations and making sure everyone understands their role in upholding those standards. I think there's a role to play in regular training and resources as well. So I think Belinda commented on that too, that it's on the agenda every week or every month, and it becomes embedded within the behaviours, that it's just part of what you do. You talked a little bit as well, Belinda, about role modelling the behaviours and making sure that the leader and the manager is seen as someone who is displaying those desirable behaviours and sort of driving that ethical and inclusive workplace.
Absolutely, and I think as well, it's if a new team member is coming, it has to form part of that onboarding, Stephen. So if this this well-being mindset, the well-being-centric approach, hopefully it is part and parcel of the organisation, but it needs to, it has to be in every room, in every setting, in every conversation. So that has to be set out at the very beginning of the journey with an organisation and a new staff member or new team members coming on board. So it's back to that onboarding and making sure that it forms part and parcel of every conversation, so that people know that this is actually something we're really passionate about. We care about you as an individual. It's back to that triangle of caring for others, cultivating those relationships and inspiring that change. So it's having that conversation, but it has to be at the very outset when you're taking on new team members into the organisation.
And another thing that you could use a bit more sort of a practical approach would be reward and recognition. I mean, is that already in existence in your workplace? And is that just to do with business targets, or is it to do with, do you see someone who is behaving in the way and displaying the behaviours that you would like to see? Could you reward and recognise someone for that instead of just the usual things that we think about day to day in the business? So.
Absolutely, and it's interesting to see the reactions in the chat here, saying that actually it is hugely important to everyone at every level of the organization, and when it's not there, it's very much apparent. Please do keep sharing your comments in the chat. Please do keep asking us questions. But one more question, if I can throw it in before we go to the broader Q&A, is this, which is we're talking about introducing these strategies within organizations, but what about when things are just a wee bit more difficult and we're going to a more resource constrained, or perhaps an organization that works in a hybrid capacity, obviously post-pandemic? The nature of the working world has changed, and it's a lot more difficult to sometimes get the nuance, to get the face-to-face time, to communicate as clearly as we would like when you might be sending one another a Teams message, or having a very brief online call. Are there any examples, Judith, Belinda, that you can draw on in day-to-day lives about how managers might navigate these slightly more difficult circumstances?
I think there's a way that we can leverage the technology to be more useful for us in that, to promote open communication and encourage regular and transparent communication, and it can also sort of bridge that gap between remote and in-office employees and help to create that team. But I do get the point that it can also, create some distance between people. So I think that looking at mentorship is another way that you can do it. So connect people together, maybe someone in-house, maybe someone in a more remote setting can help build a more inclusive and supportive work environment that way.
Absolutely. And I think as well, especially if you are in that more remote style of working, and obviously you're really relying on technology, which we are today, and we're bringing together and we're incorporating the chat and we're trying to make it as interactive and engaging as we possibly can. But I think it's important that those meetings, that when you're bringing the team together, whether it's on a weekly basis for a weekly debrief of actions, outcomes in terms of the organization and key information, all of that, but that you've got a designated time. Again, it's bringing well-being conversation into every setting, every room. So it's having maybe 5-10 minutes at the start. How is everyone? Maybe have some fun task just to try and sort of, it's back to, Judith, you did that so powerful meditation, something to sort of help bring people together. So maybe a fun task, or, a mindful moment, sharing of something inspirational. It's back to the storytelling. So it's having a place, whether it's a couple of minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, designated time. How is everyone? And trying to get everyone on board, and maybe rotate that as well, so that maybe it's not always your voice. So maybe on a weekly basis, share that out among the team, that if somebody else chair the meeting, or share that's, to chair that segment of the meeting, get ideas from the team of what they'd like to see here, maybe get a guest speaker in maybe once a month to do a brief talk. There's an array of things, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. And I think that's sometimes what we sometimes, marry off in our head, that well-being, there's an added cost, and can we afford it? Actually, the most meaningful conversations we can have can be over a cup of coffee or a virtual chat. It's showing people that you care. Hold on to that word, care, and it's how you do that, and make sure that it's part and parcel of every meeting and every agenda that you take place. Yeah.
So a couple of other things have sprung to mind there, that's sort of like maybe a well-being committee. You might have volunteers in your organization, in your team, who have skills that you're not really sure of outside of what you didn't really know that they had. There might be a yoga teacher. So again, just highlighting the fact that it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Use the resources that you have, and people might be very, very happy and willing to volunteer to help support that agenda within your work. And one really easy thing to do to sort of that's free to role model that behavior is taking all your holidays. So if you as a leader or a manager don't display those behaviors where you're taking those holidays and taking that time out for yourself, and you're carrying things over and over, then that sort of creates the culture in your team that maybe I shouldn't be taking all my holidays. So I think that one, I've heard that before, really resonates with me, and making sure that you again as the leader have time and care for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that, there's something that comes through, especially when you're trying to make that case, is, for the small investment that it is, whether it be some resources, whether it be time, the payoff is enormous. I mean, the productivity levels of workers who are happy, people in your team who are happy, an organization that is happy has far better outcomes as well. And it's really a fundamental mindset shift. And I think if we can all keep chipping away in our own workplaces to keep developing that, to keep embedding that, and make it front and center, and as Belinda says, bring it into every single room, we'll start to see the changes very, very quickly. I want to throw it open now to a broader Q&A, and thank you all so much for submitting some absolutely fantastic questions that we've had. I want to go to John's question first, which I think is a really interesting one and might address some things that I think people get wrong about leadership, which is, what personality type makes a good leader, especially when we're thinking about being an ethical leader and having well-being embedded at the center. Any thoughts on personality type and how that influences things?
This is a really interesting question. I don't think there is any one or two personality types that make good leaders. I think that good leadership skills can be honed and grown, basically. And I think for me, what I like in a good leader is for them to be engaging, for them to be using storytelling to help deliver their strategy, and vision and communication skills are really important for me to be able to understand what a good leader is saying and to really get on board with the agenda that they want to move forward. I'm sure you've thoughts about that, Belinda, as well. I know we've talked about this offline too. We really like this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was referring back to many, many years ago when I did the Myers-Briggs assessment and what my leadership style came out at. But there's actually one model listen, there's lots of models on this and there's lots of assessments that you can do. But there's one that I particularly like, and that's the head, the hands and the heart philosophy. And really sort of the idea of this is when the head, the hands and the heart are working in alignment, that makes for a really good leader. And I suppose, what does that mean? Well, the head is that sort of practical, intellectual, intelligence side of things. The hands is not afraid to get the sleeves rolled up when you need to, get stuck in with the team whenever a situation arises, so you're practical in terms of using your hands as well. But ultimately, it's the heart, and it's back to this care, piece, and it's that emotional intelligence, and it's that empathy, and it's that understanding of others. So, there's a lot to be said that when the head, the hands, and heart all come together, that is the basis of what a really good leader should be. So, there's one to think about.
Absolutely, and I think it's emotional intelligence is such a huge part of this, part of conversation. And if anybody hasn't read the work of Daniel Goleman, do go away and have a look at it. It's some of the most influential literature on this kind of topic, and there's also great CMI resources giving you summaries if you don't perhaps have the time to read the full book. So an extra shout out to our resources there. How can leaders increase their emotional intelligence, Belinda? Is it something that is it a practice, or is it something that's innate? Is it, I suppose it ties into that leadership thing. If it's not a personality type, are some people just more naturally inclined to be better in tune with emotional intelligence?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, we're all different, and we're all on a different sort of scale in terms of emotional intelligence, but it's definitely a term that has really come to the fore, especially I think since the pandemic as well. But it's back to self-leadership. How well do you know yourself? So self-awareness is the basis in my mind for it, and it's really understanding actually on a daily basis or at any moment in time, how am I? It's back to setting that appointment with yourself, that self-check, the self-reflection. But Stephen, it takes practice. I have formally been doing all of this work for the last 7 years, and I'm still evolving and I'm still learning. And as part of the work that I do under Be Inspired to Be, and there's lots of different elements to it, but I have created a concept, and it's called creatively cleansing, and I've actually trademarked that. And it's proven in terms of science and research how actually using creativity can support our mental health and well-being. But it's back to being in tune with yourself, scheduling that time. The basis of that triangular model for the wellbeing-centric leadership starts with self, as far as I'm concerned, and that's self-care, self-awareness, and it's practice. You've hit the nail on the head, Stephen. It's practice, and it's scheduling the time to do it. We tend to put everybody else's needs ahead of our own. It's standard. We're nurturing people. We're human beings. That's what we tend to do. But actually, when you take a wee step back and you really start to go do an introspective approach and start to peel back the layers, it's really, really powerful. And I actually did a wee post on LinkedIn this morning because it was linked into what we were talking about in terms of well-being, and it's that piece of, well, what have you got on your agenda to look after yourself today? And it's back to those moments of what Judith did, that 10-minute meditation, but that can even be 2 or 3 minutes just of pausing, connecting with your breath, resetting. Okay, I'm ready. Let's go. Hopefully that helps.
No, I think it does. And I think, it's a matter of, practicing what you preach, but also practicing and getting better. And I think, Judith, you even said it yourself during the meditation that it is a practice. You get better at it with time. Once you have done it, 50 times, you'll find yourself getting into that mindset a lot more quickly, a lot more easily. And I think that's something, that if you can embed that, especially if you're early in your career, if you can embed it from the start, you're going to carry the benefits of that all the way through. Sticking with a kind of similar theme here, and I suppose I really like the spin of this question. Louise Hilton Clement asks, or says rather, I find endless meetings have a really big personal impact on personal effectiveness, well-being as a leader and the wider team. But do you have any tips for more effective ways of working other than meetings? I think that's a really good point. We've spoken a lot about meetings, but what are the other things that we can do outside of those traditional confines?
Linda, do you want to start with that one? I think I've started all of them.
Yeah, well, I suppose the piece is, what is the point? What's the purpose of the meeting? I think is always a good place to start, especially for us as leaders in a managerial position where maybe we're bringing our team together. And I suppose the piece is, it's back to always do what you've always done, always get what you've always got. And, sometimes a Monday morning, that's just a standard way we have a team meeting. But actually, is there a need for the meeting on a Monday morning? Is there a better time for it? What's the purpose of the meeting? Who needs to be at the meeting? And it's back to communication. It's looking at your communication strategy. What is that? So there's lots of ways that you can communicate with people, and does it necessarily have to be in the form of a meeting? And sometimes it can be like a webinar type things, or it could be pre-recorded and people can watch it, at their own time. But it's really looking at that schedule and what is the purpose of the meeting is probably what I'd be asking, because if it's not being effective, well, does it need to be then reworked in other ways? And it's sharing that. So it's again having that courage, Louise, to, if you're finding that maybe it's endless meetings, it's having that courage to speak up and but say, can I maybe ask, can we maybe do this in a different way? So have a thought, have a solution in mind, but have the courage to speak up in relation to that.
I think as well, the sort of nature of our meeting tools, if it's going to be a virtual meeting, it's half an hour or it's a full hour. Whereas, can you do something in 15 minutes and then have the rest of the time for other things for yourself? And also, if there is a meaning and, the meeting is to be purposeful, can you do one of the walking meetings, something like that? Or can you take it outside, or can you take it to a coffee shop and just do it, just maybe have that break from the monotony of the sitting looking at the screen all day, or having meetings for meeting's sake.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think
brilliant.
Walk and talk. I was going to say, Belinda, you're in ahead of me. Adam Freeman for one-to-ones. I love a walk and talk. I think that it's a very, very nice one, especially when the weather is good. Perhaps not in the depths of winter. Maybe it's just a lap around the office or up and down the stairs to get the blood flowing. But definitely a really good one. I suppose taking the formality out of things as a meeting, it always feels very corporate, very rigid in structure, and everybody kind of knows, or at least they think they know what the meeting is and how it's going to entail. And I suppose it's those conceptions I want to drill into in our next question. This is a brilliant question from Holly, which is, how do we effectively embed psychological safety when a team, and I suppose different team members, have different expectations of what that is? I think that's a really difficult question. So please don't hate me for posing it to you both. Judith, I might come to you on this one. Belinda fielded the first one, went first last time, so this one's over to you.
Yeah, no worries. Yes, I think that's a really important one. And I actually am just looking at sort of the live comments there, and there are quite a lot of comments around sort of almost sort of bullying and sort of the more negative side of leadership and management. So I think that this is a super important question. And I think, again, it starts with at the outset of defining what psychological safety is clearly, and setting clear expectations, and also we don't all naturally know what that means. So offering training on the importance of psychological safety and drawing on external resources potentially in order to do that. I think it's really important that within the organization you have an open communication model, and to be able to have those conversations, and when any issues do arise, address them promptly, so that that people who are involved in that understand that it's going to get looked at and it's going to get addressed quickly and constructively. And then finally, and I think this is really important as well, is encourage a culture where mistakes are viewed as learning opportunities and not, this is the be all and end all, this person is cancelled, or, you know, to try and get the dialogue going and understand that this is something that's happened, let's try and move past it. And it can help reduce fear and promote a more open and innovative environment when we do that.
Mm-hmm. Belinda, any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. No, Judith, excellent advice there. And I suppose there's just one extra thing, and that is, do you have a speak up policy? So it's maybe looking at those HR policies and procedures and making sure that in terms of the psychological safety, actually, that there is a speak up policy framework, and that everybody's aware of it. So again, it's back to breaking down the stigma, talk about it. We have measures in place to support you in terms of psychological safety. We want this to be a place where you feel valued, where your voice is heard. Now, again, us as individuals need to be mindful of how we potentially, especially if we're not agreeing with something, of how we actually address that. So it's back to the onboarding, making sure that we're professional at all times, and that's everyone across the organisation. But it's having that safety net and feeling that actually I can, you know, say my thoughts or ideas openly. And if it's not maybe in an open forum, that you can do it on a one-to-one basis with your line manager. And that you've got the framework and the speak up policy there to support everyone in terms of that. So it's part of the culture.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And having a policy is all well and good, but actually making sure that everybody is kept up to date with it, making sure that it's reviewed periodically, the things that might slip through, especially for a small and medium-sized organization, might forget. For certainly larger ones will have HR teams dedicated to that. I'm going to ask another really difficult one here from Michelle, which is, how do you know where the line is between being genuinely empathetic to people's well-being versus people then taking advantage of it? And I suppose this is one of those things where if someone is more skeptical of well-being and its benefits in the workplace, they might be more inclined to say, well, look, what are you being serious with me? Why should we take this seriously? And that's a very difficult conversation then. So what techniques, what tips, anything that you can do to help people know where the line is?
I'll start with this one, Judith. So I think boundaries are really, really important here. And especially where, the line manager is being empathetic. So you're maybe leading a wee bit more with your heart, and maybe the hands and the head is a wee bit secondary. And I get that, because that word care is there, and we as leaders need to care for our colleagues and our teams and all the rest, but it's about boundaries. And there's a real life example of this in terms of my leadership journey, and a powerful question that was said to me in terms of me being a leader many years ago was, when you've got a colleague and maybe there is that wee sort of, you feel over empathetic, maybe the person is going through a lot, but the reality is you're there to support them in work. And a powerful question for me, and I share it with you, is, how can I support you in work today? So it's creating that boundary. You're offering the support. You're there to care. You're there to look after, but you're to do that within the work environment. So it's making sure that the conversation isn't bleeding into too much, disclosure or personal information that actually you're not, as a leader, going to really be able to do anything about. Or personally, you can obviously signpost them to your employees, support programs, your occupational health people. But in terms of what you can do as a line manager, how can I support you in work today? For me, has been a very powerful question.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really clear response there. And I think as well, just to I know we're tight on time now, but I think that balance of empathy and accountability. So, you need to be protective of your employees and your colleagues, but also there's got to be some accountability for showing up to work today. And I think maybe regular check-ins, regular meetings, unfortunately, but regular sort of checkpoints, I suppose, whereby you can you can just keep that accountability going and remind and set those expectations ongoing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think it's a testament to how much ground we have covered, that we could keep digging on this topic. And I think, to be honest with you, we could probably have an entire day's session talking about the importance of well-being and inclusive leadership in the workplace. And I think there's an awful lot of food for thought, but I suppose trying to summarize it all together and trying to follow Belinda and Judith and synthesize it all together. Leadership is very much as a practice, it's a skill. And I think we can have these discussions and they're incredibly valuable. It's then about translating that into tangible action. So for all of you joining us, I would invite you that before you finish work today, have a think this afternoon, maybe set that meeting with yourself and think about just one small practical change that you can bring to your team before the end of this week. Don't make it a New Year's resolution, embed it today to prioritize the well-being of yourself as a leader, but also within your team as well. Whether it's just starting more open conversation or simply just checking in, maybe it's one of those walk and talks, adopt a more well-being centric approach. We can guarantee that you will feel the benefits and you will see the benefits. So that's all we have time for. In wrapping up, I want to pass you back to Natasha and thank you all so much for joining us. The conversation will carry on CMI Northern Ireland on our LinkedIn page especially. So if you haven't already done so, follow us over there. And Natasha, back to you.
Thank you very much. So that is it for today's session. Thank you to Stephen, who has been a wonderful host, to Judith and Belinda for your insights and your expertise here. Please do stay tuned to hear more about CMI membership, and thank you for joining us.
Don't forget, as a CMI member, you can find the latest management and leadership insights at managers.org.uk. If you're not yet a member, join our community to discover CMI Confidence with on-demand resources, our network of mentors, and industry-leading accreditations.